This episode is brought to you by Bleacher Report. How do you follow sports? From college football to the NBA, Bleacher Report brings you the latest news, live scores, and epic highlights from your favorite leagues, teams, and athletes, all in one app. Dive into exclusive shows hosted by your favorite athletes and original Bleacher Report series with breaking news, rumors, and predictions all season long. Download Bleacher Report to personalize your coverage.
Hello, Mavs fans. Welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark. I'm Kirk Henderson, and tonight I am joined, as always, by Josh Bowe. We are editors at Mavs Moneyball. Dallas Mavericks just dismantled the Portland Trail Blazers 132-108. How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing good. That was a nice breezy win. I don't know. And that's our show, folks. So we'll talk to you on Christmas. But no, that was a fun. I mean, I think I've told you this before that at the stage of where I'm at with watching these games is I care more about like the games against the good teams because I care less about the winning and the losing as like a binary result. And I watch process, and you don't get much process when you play these really bad tanking teams. So fans should absolutely eat these games up. And when I was in high school and in college, I absolutely ate these games up. But now I just don't really get too excited about these types of games. But this, for a blowout against a crappy team, just aesthetically, this was a very fun game to watch. So I appreciate a lot of the athleticism on display tonight. The Mavericks made a lot of good plays. Offensively, they scored 64 points in the paint. They were living at the rim. It was fun to watch.
I was very entertained. So there was one stretch in the first quarter where I'm pretty sure the Mavericks got just bullied in the first quarter. They're down 31-28. They looked a little asleep. The free throw disparity was something like 10-3. I could be wrong about the particulars of the total free throw disparity for the quarter, but the Mavericks did not get to the line much in the first quarter. And so the Trail Blazers finished the game attempting 19 free throws. The Mavericks finished the game attempting 34. So and at least 5 of those Trail Blazers free throws came during absolute garbage time. All right. But Bernardo said it was 12-3. So if you do the math there for everybody involved, the Mavericks shot the Blazers shot 7 free throws over the following 3 quarters. The Mavericks shot 31. It's just it's a stylistic difference paired with, the Blazers have some really interesting, fun players that I think we should probably chat about at some point in this podcast. But these two teams are not even in the same league. It is really something to see, and I had a good time watching this game. They could have won by 50 points if they really put the pedal to the metal. I mean, we finished with like a hilarious Luka Doncic game where he has 27, 7 and 7, and yet he was 1 of 7 from 3. Guys were missing his like wide open shots off of his passes. Like this game could have been destruction in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And instead it was one of these games where the Mavericks just kind of got the opponents on the ropes and kept punching.
Yeah. Kyrie and Luka combined to shoot 3 of 13 from 3, and they win. They're up 30 late in the fourth quarter. So that just kind of goes to show you what kind of game this was.
I gotta go look at Kyrie's shooting these last 2 games because Kyrie was over 1,000.
Yeah, He's hit a little rough patch, and it goes. I wonder if that's what
4-15 the last two games. 4-15, and
three.
then 3 of 19 going back to the Golden State game.
Yeah, wonder if that's what played into him missing that first Clippers game.
Sure.
I wonder if he's just a little worn out, which it happens. It's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the kudos to the Mavericks because
oh yeah,
one sentence summary of this game is they understood the assignment. Like the Trailblazers' two primary big men are DeAndre Ayton, who's as soft as tissue paper, and then their backup center is a rookie, Donovan Clingan, who's a very impressive rookie, but is still a rookie.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, the Mavericks were like, we are taking the ball to the cup. Like they scored 64 points in the paint. They attacked those two big men relentlessly, whether they were preying on Clingan's inexperience or Ayton's just pure defensive ineffectiveness. They were 19 of 23 in the restricted area, and they were 13 of 17 in the paint outside the restricted area. That is baffling shooting percentage in the paint, so that they were 80% around there on shots in the paint tonight on 40 attempts. That's really good. You don't see that in the NBA, right? Even in the regular season, you don't see that a lot in the NBA. Teams shooting 80% in the paint on 40 attempts in a game where both teams were theoretically trying to win. It was just a dominant display in the paint. They knew exactly what they wanted to do against the Portland's weak rim defense. And Daniel Gafford especially was just a man among boys out there tonight. That was impressive.
Well, and I'm seeing some of the chat is really going at Clingan and put it to you like this, guys. Clingan was on this Mavericks team. We would love him to pieces. I'm not sure if he's a starting big in the NBA, but he's actually quite good. And he's averaging 2 blocks a game at this point.
Yeah,
he's just so. Anyway, this isn't a.
He's good, but he's a rookie, and that's why
Lively. They got him on the ropes and just kept punching. Yeah.
That's why Derek Lively's rookie season was so astounding, because this is kind of what rookie big men look like in their first year. Is what Clingan looked like tonight.
This is a great troll in the chat. Drew says, I remember when Kirk wanted to trade Tim Hardaway Jr. for Ayton. He saw my tweet out there because look, Ayton's going to go down as one of these guys that doesn't make sense in basketball. Greg Oden is actually going to talk to the team before the next time the team. I think it's the next time the Mavericks play the Trailblazers in a couple of days. So I'm pretty sure they play the Blazers on the 27th. Not too long after this, and it's like Ayton just doesn't. He's always been this way. That's why I was never sold on him. He's just not interested in basketball, and he will play just hard enough to get his next contract, and that's it. That's all he is.
Yeah.
And it's disappointing because he's actually. It's like you watch a guy like him, and you watch a guy like Lively, who are the 0.01% of human specimen. And the difference between the two of them, because I really believe this, Ayton knows what to do. He knows how to play basketball. He simply chooses not to play the way that he could. Whereas Lively is an incredibly smart basketball player, and in a different time might have been the focal point of an NBA offense, but instead has chosen to maximize how his physical and mental attributes fit a basketball game and plays his ass off 1,000% of the time. And it's just, it's really something to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching Ayton in Arizona and thinking he looked like the next. This is going to sound really stupid, but there were moments when I watched him in Arizona and I was like, "This is Shaq-like," the way he was just physically that much more dominant than everyone else, combined with some of that skill. And then, it just hasn't translated at all. And kudos to the Mavericks. Lively didn't score a lot, but he made both of his shots. And then Gafford had 23 points on a perfect 7-7 from the floor, and then got to the free throw line 14 more times after that. I mean, they were scoring through those Portland big men like they weren't even there. Sometimes they weren't there because they weren't rotating. Other times they got them caught on switches on some of Portland's smaller guards, because like you said, Portland's got an interesting roster. Like they play Ayton and Clayton, and then they got Simon, Sharp, and Henderson, and those are three relatively smaller guards that play between 24 to 30 minutes a night. So that's a lot of minutes for three smaller guards. Two of them are on the floor at the same time a lot of the time. So the Mavericks had a decisive size advantage in this game, and they utilized that, especially on offense. Defensively, I mean, the Mavericks kind of cakewalked through this game on the defensive side of the ball. They didn't need to exert that much effort because Portland is not that good. But offensively, it was a clinic getting to the rim. I mean, Luka, he only made one 3-pointer. He was a perfect 7 of 7 in the paint. He was 6 of 6 in the floater range, the paint outside the restricted area. Like, everyone killed it in the paint tonight, and it was very decisive. And so that's good. Like, they clearly had a game plan of how they wanted to attack this bad team, and they went and did it. And guess what? Now, your stars don't play 40 minutes. Luka got to 30, Kyrie got to 29, but they didn't really, that was not a hard 30 minutes, for Luka.
Luka had suffered a heel contusion against the Warriors, obviously finished that game, missed the last 2 games against the Clippers. And I think the big picture take, it's very important that the NBA have its stars play on Christmas Day. They're already going up against the NFL. These matchups that they have on Christmas Day are frankly not looking very good with some of the teams that aren't playing versus the teams that are. And it's just one of these situations where, I wouldn't be shocked if the league was like, if there's any concern, just make sure you're cautious with your guys. Luka's tough. You gotta kind of pin him down to make sure he doesn't play when he's injured. Tim McMahon said on the True podcast today that Luka played through the NBA playoffs with a sprained knee. I mean, that was never on the fucking injury report. Thanks, NBA. Cool. So it's like the guy's gonna, they don't want him to, they want him to play on the Christmas Day game. And so when he was announced as questionable, the first report that I saw earlier today, I kind of figured he might at least come test the waters, and he did so. And he looked a little, the shot looked rusty. Everything else about his game looked fine. He was moving around on defense. I really wish the Mavericks would tell him or do something early in the game. Like, do you remember how Kendrick Perkins used to get a touch in the paint early for the Boston Celtics?
Yep.
I wish they would do something for Luka where they're like, here's a 7-footer. I don't want him to shoot a 3-point shot as his first shot. It drives me crazy. Anyway, that's
the shame about him suffering another lower body injury, because the big thing when he came back from that week off, his legs looked so fresh and he was shooting threes like crazy. And then, you look at this game and it was like he, I know that there was some, Mavericks fans discourse about like how hurt was Luka. Was he actually that hurt, or were the Mavericks playing, games? And he was hurt. He missed 2 games. And he looked, in this game, he still didn't look physically tonight like he did when he came back from that week off. Like,
floaters looked good. Drive range was there.
Yeah, all that was
just
great.
Like
his threes weren't there, and I feel like that's the biggest indication of how his legs are feeling.
Harp was my favorite because he usually says such nonsense, and he called one of Luka's really awful 3-point shots. He goes, "That's a rhythm shot," and Luka wasn't in rhythm at all. I just kind of started chuckling at that. But, so Luka gets his 30 minutes in and out. He's able to shake off some of the rust. He was dealing on his passes, and he looked nice on defense. So, going up against the Minnesota Timberwolves team, the loss to the Hawks tonight, that the Wolves are in shambles. So this is the kind of situation where, maybe the Mavericks can hopefully just dog walk the Wolves and just show them that this is not a rivalry on Christmas Day.
Yeah, and it's good to get, I'm glad Luka came back for this game. I'm glad that Wolves game is not his game back from the injury. Just to get in a game under his belt before they play on Christmas. Help him get back into the flow. I think is very helpful too.
Well, Captain Crunch in the chat says he'll drop another 40-point triple-double on Christmas just because it's a big stage. Here's the funny thing about early half of the year Luka national television games. Part of why, and this is just me getting off a little bit of a tangent, part of why I think the narrative against Luka goes a certain way is in no small part because the Mavericks over the past several years have not looked great on national TV games in the first half of the year. Like, do you remember these previous 2 years where we'd be going, man, God, could they just show up on a Sunday afternoon game for once? And it just never seemed to happen.
And then everyone solidifies their opinion about the team.
And then all of a sudden they win 75% of their games from, March on. And it's like,
everyone is already checked out. Yeah.
How did we get here? How did the Mavericks do this? It's the last 30 games of the season. They're playing against tanking teams. Why should we care what they say? And anyway, I actually, my whole point, Captain Crunch, is I actually think there's something to that. Like a Luka like primetime performance. He likes it. Like, he likes playing in prime time. He likes being the center of attention. I just think that there are certain times in the past when the Mavericks just haven't had the juice. And, they played Najee Marshall no minutes tonight relative to what I think he would get in a regular rotation. Maxey got a lot of burn. Shout out to Maxey for his first made basket since November 25th.
That is insane.
Yeah, that is
his third 3-pointer of the season.
Wow.
He is 3 of 12.
Man. So anyway, the Luka of it all was something.
No, honestly, I want to keep riffing on this point you're making because I think it's a good point. You're talking about Luka and the national TV games and how that can kind of change the narrative.
Yep.
Like, if he detonates on Minnesota on Christmas when everyone's watching, because there's the only games played on Christmas are those national TV games. Yeah. So if you're watching an NBA game at 1:30 Central, you're watching the Mavericks. It could be a good jolt to kind of remind everyone of how good this team is right now, because they're definitely flying under the radar, right? Like, in terms,
the MVP is up for grabs.
Yeah, but I don't consume as much national media maybe as you do or some of our other staffers do, but it does kind of feel like when other people are talking about their contenders, like the Mavericks get a mention, but it's definitely a lot of OKC, a lot of Boston, a lot of Cleveland, Houston, because they're kind of the new shiny toy. And I'm not saying the Mavericks are being completely left out of the conversation, but it does feel like as much as a 19-10 team that made the finals, 6 months ago can go under the radar, they are kind of going under the radar as much as a team in these circumstances can. And if Luka detonates on the Wolves on Christmas Day, like, there's going to be a lot of people that are like, the Mavericks are 20-10. Luka's killing it. You're gonna open up some eyes, and that could help. Again, this stuff does not matter, but for Mavericks fans that want to see the team get the praise that the team does deserve because they've been playing well this season, that would be a good opportunity if Luka dropped another bomb.
I want to keep talking about this.
Okay. Let's keep talking about it because the game was kind of whatever.
we're gonna take a break.
All right.
All right, guys. I got some really good news for you. We're a family-friendly podcast. We're not a family-friendly podcast, but we're all friends here. That's the whole point of this podcast. And one of the things I'm very delighted to hear is I got a notification the other day just from our guy at Body Spec to let me know that our attempts to persuade you to sign up and get a DEXA scan has actually been paying off to some degree or another. We've seen more conversions, which means those of you who are unaware of what I'm talking about, you're about to hear about it again. Body Spec is our official sponsor here at Pod Maverick. I got to go actually put up the banner. And what they do is they provide a full body scan at a reasonable price, and it's something that just about anyone could use. I'm a blogger / database manager. I sit at the desk all day, and the exercise I get is the exercise that I force myself to get. So, whether you're a 25 something, post prime athlete like our guy David Trink, who still does, what does he do? He does CrossFit, or you're like our Mavs Moneyball police officer contributor Matthew, who lifts all the time.
He squats 3,000 pounds.
My God. A DEXA scan is really for anybody, and particularly if you're a person who's not in any way, shape, or form in shape. and you're thinking about it. It's a great way to learn about where you are and kind of give you a starting point. So if you'll click the link, body spec link in the show notes, both for the podcast and for the video, you'll see what I'm talking about. It goes to a special Pod Maverick page. We're offering a special promo code. If you use the code in all caps, PodMavs45 at checkout, you'll get $15 off a single scan. This is a great gift. Christmas is in 2 days, or it's, perfect for, a New Year's resolution. You or someone else, Body Specs competitors charge as much as $150 for a scan like this. So you'll be getting real usable information for a fantastic price. Again, check that Body Spec link in the show notes. Use the code PodMaverick45. PodMavs45 at checkout. Josh and I, we'll probably talk a little bit more about it later, but I'm still sort of thinking about it. And I think what I'm going to do is after the new year, I'm going to get another scan, kind of give myself a baseline, figure out some of the things I want to change for the new year, and kind of use that as a jumping off point. But again, thanks for letting us do some business here.
Yeah. One note is when I went and got my scan, the technician or the guy who did my scan offered some advice, and if you are jumping in with us and using our promo code to take advantage and signing up for a scan, he suggested to schedule something before January 1st because, like you said, Kirk, New Year's resolutions, the schedule will get way busier and slots will get filled after January 1st. So if you want to get kind of your first scan in, he advised that it would make more sense to get it in right before January 1st. Otherwise, appointments might start filling up, and it might be you might have.
There are a lot of locations.
There definitely are. Yeah, for sure, there are.
You and I were laughing about that. So it's like you go through the webpage, and you're like, closest one near me, and you're like, just makes me think of the Al Pacino speech. It's like the inches we need are everywhere or all around us. Only they meant DEXA scans. Okay, so we're going to insert some ads for business. Please listen to those. We'll be right back.
If you're like me, you're looking for an edge for sports betting. So when I heard Masterclass had a new class on beating the odds, taught by the pros who have made millions, I had to check it out. With Masterclass, you can learn from the best to become your best. Masterclass is the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 of the world's best. For just $10 a month, an annual membership with Masterclass gets you unlimited access to every instructor. And you can access Masterclass on your phone, computer, smart TV, or even in audio mode. Novice bettors are at a huge disadvantage, with most losing early and fast. Before, the knowledge needed to level up was hard to come by. Now there's Masterclass, and the classes really make a difference. 88% of members feel that Masterclass has made a positive impact on their lives. I use it, and you should too. Plus, every new membership comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So don't wait another moment to start your learning journey with Masterclass. And Masterclass always has great offers during the holidays, sometimes up to as much as 50% off. Head over to masterclass.com/Blue Wire for their current offer. That's up to 50% off at masterclass.com/Blue Wire. That's masterclass.com/Blue Wire. And remember, all sports betting involves risk, and you're responsible for complying with all sports betting laws in your jurisdiction.
Hey, it's Austin James. Yes, I'm living with diabetes, but it doesn't have to define me. Thanks to the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor, I get real-time glucose readings throughout the day. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor is small and easy to wear, giving me the freedom to focus on my life as a parent and a musician. Now this is progress. You can get a free sensor at freestylelibre.us.
Offer available for people who qualify. Visit myfreestyle.us to see all terms and conditions. Certain exclusions apply. Data on file, Abbott Diabetes Care. For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
Okay, and if I haven't made a call for it in a little while, please consider subscribing to our show. We're kind of hitting the lull of the season. I'm always amused by how many more listens we get February to the end of the year versus now. But we love those who subscribe to the show and listen and those sorts of things. It's very valuable to us because we're not just doing this for the sake of doing it. We're doing it because people seem to like it. Anyway. Sorry, there is a commenter in the chat that is throwing out some really wild comments that that are so distracting. I don't know what to do with myself. All right, so we talked a little bit big picture right before the break. I want to go back to that a little bit because you beat a team 132-108, and there's just not much to say. I will say that completely blanks out the Mavericks losing by 23 to the Clippers on their net rating.
Right.
Now they should be back to where they were before 3 games ago. It's just like a complete wash there because the Mavericks lost that game by 23.
Yeah.
So one of the things we talked about in the offseason continually is how the Mavericks needed to get off to a better start. And I think after this many games, when we've said this before, but it's worth repeating, that better start has been achieved. So through 29 games, they have won 19 and lost 10. They are firmly seated as they're in the 4 seed. They're a half game behind Memphis right now, unless ESPN standings aren't correct. And they're 3.5 games up on Denver for the 5th seed, and Denver is capable of imploding at any minute. The larger point being here is, and Denver actually has a lot more games to play than everybody else. They're 3 games behind the Mavericks in terms of total games played. The point being here is that I think that if I was to give you a range of outcomes for what I could have hoped for the early part of the season, the first third of the season, more or less, the Mavericks have hit that mark. Now, would I have liked them to be like the 3 seed or higher? Sure. But they're not digging out from under.
They're not 10th or 9th.
Yeah.
Right. Because if they were, what we talked about, don't puddle around 500. Because puddling around 500, you can do that in the East and you'll be all right. You cannot do that in the West because guess what? The Minnesota Timberwolves are 14-14 and they are in 11th place right now. You don't want to have to put that many teams ahead of you to get back into that home court advantage chase once you start getting into December and January, because eventually there's just so many teams ahead of you. Even if you get on a winning streak, what are the odds that you're going to just leapfrog, 7 teams or whatever you're going to need to, however many teams you need to leapfrog. So that's why, the 5 and 7 in the first 12 games were on a lot of alarm bells. Cause it's like, look, if they're 2 games under 500 at Christmas, then they're going to be in deep, deep trouble because again, it's not fair, but the West is just a significantly better conference than the East. There's just no margin for error.
Well, they're 14-3. They're 14-3 since that start.
Yeah. So they're doing what they need to do. They're absolutely in a position to do what they want. It's Memphis and Oklahoma City are good teams. Houston's also a good team, but they're young enough that you can maybe hope that there might be some fall off. They're 20-9 right now, which is awesome. They've apparently played a pretty light schedule for the last month or so, and it's going to turn around for them.
Sure.
But yeah, that's, even if they're 4th, I know they're not a top 3 seed, which is kind of the goal. But they've only been 4th one other time in the Luka era, and that was when they went to the conference finals in 2022. So, 4th or better it should be kind of like the overarching goal. Obviously, top 3 would be the main goal if you can get there. But we told them to get off to a better start. They're getting off to a better start, and they've played 19 games against teams with 500 or better records. They've played 10 games against teams below 500. So their schedule is definitely going to take a turn for the better, I think. Even if the games pick up, like the pace of games might pick up, I think they're going to start playing some crappy teams to kind of beef up their schedule. So the fact that they're 19-10 and they've played 19 games against teams that are with winning records, that's pretty good. They're 11-8 against teams above 500. Not the best mark in the league, but they're, Memphis is 7-7, Houston's 11-6, OKC is 14-5. They're pacing right with the tops of the conference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's just sort of where we end up here. You don't want to take any win or any opponent for granted, but the Mavericks are just positioned to be in a good place. And as we've alluded to it, and then we've outright said it, there's still a lot of different gears for this team to hit. This particular starting lineup that got rolled out tonight, they're now 6-0. It's more
really
or less,
they haven't lost since they've put this lineup out there.
Not since it's the lineup that everyone clamored for since the Klay Thompson signing. So you got Luka, Kyrie, Klay, PJ, Lively. That's the 5. They're 6-0. And that's the lineup that before Luka went down for injury, they just passed the 100-minute mark with that lineup, and the net rating was like, it wasn't like world breaking, don't get me wrong, but it's the kind of lineup to where if you're to play it for 24 minutes a night or something like that, the numbers tell you good stuff. So I'm interested in that. Okay, Drew notes that lineup leads the NBA in net rating, so maybe it is that good.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good. I haven't looked at it. I haven't looked it up in a few days, but I know the last time I looked it up, it is pretty good.
No, and we're just kind of in a holding pattern here. And I don't mean that in a bad way. There's certain things where you can beat down the doors and continue to talk about it. Whereas I'll just be quite candid with everybody. Like the Mavericks are playing so well right now that I am checking out on the Mavericks for significant portions of my day, which to you might not mean anything. The challenge here, though, is that I run a Mavericks website. So I should be thinking about the Mavericks more, only they're playing so well that I don't really have anything to say.
You're not worried. Yeah.
I'm not worried. And I'm just like, all right, there's 50 games to go. It's a long season. There's not certain stuff to get stressed about. The internet works itself up into a tizzy about whatever different thing that come up, which is just a lot of the I don't know, trying to think how to phrase this. Like, I'm very interested in these guys as people, but certain things I'm just not ever going to touch until the player decides to touch it. Like you and I spent 5 minutes talking about the Luka Doncic foundation last time. Like tonight, there's not really anywhere to go with this. Am I crazy?
No, and especially not after a game like tonight where, they played a really bad team. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk for you, but you get, we look at things with a bit more of a cynical eye or at least skeptical eye than a lot of other people. And there's nothing to be skeptical about, right? Like this feels sustainable in a way that the run last season felt sustainable. And I felt like I was trying to lead that charge when there was a kind of a swell of, this Mavericks team is just kind of on a fluky run. And I was like, no, this is real. This is sustainable. And starting the season this way, 19-10 and picking up some quality wins along the way just further backs that up for me. I mean, the Mavericks shot 12 of 36 from three tonight. That's 33%. And they
including makes from Maxi Kleber and Dwight Powell.
Yeah. Yeah. Luka and Kyrie made 3 of 13 from three. And they cruised. Like even when they were losing after the first quarter, no one thought they were going to lose this game. Like it was just only a matter of time. So like the fact that they've reinvented themselves so much, and this is so much more sustainable because again, 3-point shooting is obviously very important. And there are a lot of teams that are kind of breaking the mold right now with their 3-point shooting. But at the end of the day, unless you've got a team like Cleveland or Boston, like that has just this many remarkably consistent, shooters with a long track record, jump shots are way more variable, is a way more, dynamic variable than a layup. And the Mavericks have decided that we're going to be a paint team, both in terms of scoring and in terms of defense priority. And it's not that they don't shoot threes; they still shoot a lot of threes. Like they're not like some Neanderthal 2005 NBA team. It's just they've finally made that grown-up decision of like this isn't going to be all we're about in terms of 3-pointers. Because remember, we did podcasts not that long ago where it was like if the Mavericks don't make 10 more threes than their opponent, they lose. Like that's kind of how it felt. And they're so far away from that now. They win with the paint, guarding it, scoring in it. They win with defense. It's I don't know. It's fun to watch. But yeah, but that also means, I probably can do a better job writing about some of the cool things that we're observing. I haven't done as much of it as I probably should. And we will try to talk about some of the stuff on the podcast, but there's just not much to be skeptical about right now. Like is,
and it's so funny. Good. We had one of our longtime listeners, friend of the show, Victor, pointed out to me this morning. He goes, Can you remember a time where he pointed out how we didn't talk about Grimes going off in the fourth quarter of last game until like the 22-minute mark of the show. And it's so funny because you just mentioned this, how like so much of the Mavericks' success in prior years was like the Tim Hardaway flowchart. And now we can instead enjoy a guy like Grimes, who is playing a functionally similar role to what they needed Hardaway, or they had Hardaway doing, only it's a additive. It's not a requirement. And that's just fun.
Right. Like if a Mavericks role player had the fourth quarter that Grimes did 3 years ago, 4 years ago on one of those teams, we would be like, holy crap, like this this is the greatest thing we've ever seen. And now it's just like, okay, that's what the role players do. Like they have a different one every other game that seems to pop off.
And with the variability of what the Mavericks provide results in, so when they play the Golden State Warriors, we saw Luka off ball a ton, and Luka was kind of a monster and a menace off ball. Against Portland, they didn't need to even do that.
No,
and it's, I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, which makes a lot of people, I'm sure, listen to this show laugh, even though I grew up there till I was 12 and moved here in 1996. But
right, your two favorite teams have Patrick Mahomes and Luka Doncic.
And there's an old Bill Simmons line that he doesn't break out anymore, but probably because it's like mildly inappropriate. But there's he used to call what teams would do like the Milton Burl. Which, none of you, or very few of us, are old enough to know who Milton Burl is, but he was a Hollywood actor who apparently had a big dong. And Simmons would talk about how the story was the guy would, like, whatever contests, he would basically pull out just enough to win. And that's what the Kansas City Chiefs do. That's just how they play football. They do just enough to win. And the Mavericks, I don't want to say they do just enough to win because basketball is not structured the same, but they definitely leave things in the playbook that they don't need to run. So it's like when certain things are working, I think they trust their own process to go ahead and execute without needing to break out the fine china, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like you didn't see Luka and Kyrie setting a ton of screens tonight because, like, why? Like, you just don't. And instead, you had Daniel Gafford taking the ball from the top of the key and finishing in the rim after a couple of dribbles, which was pretty fun.
What do you ask?
Yeah, I mean, they don't need to empty out and that's part of having depth, right? Like legitimate depth.
Depth.
Right. Not like the fake depth that we talked about 5 years ago. Like real deal, like these guys would be playing these roles on other top 3 teams in the conference.
It's really nice, man.
Mm-hmm.
It allows me to spit hot fire over specific things when they lose for something like tactical, like that Clippers game where they weren't staying connected on the pick and roll, versus instead being pissed about structural shit where it's like that they cannot fix because the team is not built a certain way.
Right. Like it felt kind of silly arguing about the scheme 4 years ago when it's like the roster is not where it needs to be. Right. Yeah.
And that's what, thanks, Joe. That's good advice. Don't forget to move the elf tonight. That's actually really good advice. It's so funny because, and granted, this stuff doesn't matter now. I would rather suffer through the nonsense and enjoy a really quality team like we're dealing with now. But when Josh and I were writing, Josh has been writing for the site since 2012. I've been writing earlier. Were you 2012?
Technically 2011. Summer
okay.
2011. Right after the finals.
Right after finals. And I started 2013. We were told by the tastemakers that surround this team, predominantly in the form of local media that cater to Cuban, who's no longer part of the team, that these were not the droids you're looking for, more or less, every time we had a criticism of the team. So the fact that during the team building process with Nico Harrison, after the Carlisle debacle, losing, getting a chance to go up 3-0 on the Clippers, and then the Mavericks just collapsed. After that kind of debacle, the Mavericks have really hit their stride since they fired Carlisle, they fired Donnie Nelson, they hired Nico and Kidd, and like they of course not everything's been perfect, but they've done a very, very good job. And what's so crazy is just seeing them actually address challenges in realistic ways that solve those challenges instead of whiffing and then marketing to the fan base that, oh, these Mavericks are much better than you realize. And that's just not the case.
No, yeah. And I don't think it's a coincidence that kind of, I don't want to say like culture, but like that kind of narrative building has kind of gone away as the organization is completely different than it was like 4 years ago in terms of the basketball structure. Like you said, Cuban's not a majority owner anymore. He's not a majority voice. It's Nico, and it's also the people under Nico. Like they've hired
the cap guy. They completely revamped the organization.
Yeah, from top to bottom, from everything underneath Nico. I'm pretty sure the drafting and scouting rooms got overhauled a little bit too. It's a different front. Like it's not surprising that the team looks different because it's a way different front office than it was, the prior 10 years where we were just kind of like, what's the plan? Like we didn't really know what the plan was. And now they very much are advertising what the plan is and they're actually executing on it. And
which it doesn't make them boring to talk about. Like we still have a lot of interesting things that we hit on, but it's definitely not the kind of grab you by the lapel and drag you to the game type thing. Like these Mavericks are methodical in their ass kicking right now. And there's not a lot of like flash. Like there's not near as, I bet their dunks are down significantly from last year.
Yeah, because teams are trying to take away there's not as many lobs as there were last year, right? I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it feels like teams were like, all right, we got to take away the lobs, and like their offense is still like that was the thing against the Celtics in the playoffs, right? Was like they took away the lobs and they took away the easy stuff for the role players, and the offense kind of died while Luka and Kyrie tried to do everything. And then they go into this offseason like, okay, well, let's add Clay and let's add Najee and let's add Grimes. And now like teams are trying to take away those lobs, and you get Najee floaters and PJ Washington post ups and Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively hook shots. Like this might be the most adaptable Mavericks roster I've seen since 2011. I mean, they seemingly can handle whatever scenario that needs to be thrown at them because their roster is just so versatile.
And there's some calls earlier in the show kind of addressed why, like, for example, Najee Marshall didn't play many minutes tonight. And part of why haven't really had anything to say about it is because when you win by 30 points, it worked. And Najee was sick for a while. You can't help but wonder if maybe they want to conserve his energy. I don't know if I believe that with professional athletes, but whatever they did, I'm here for it. Like the challenge with complaining about a kid coach team boils down to the fact that the end result, conference finals, actual finals, beats the shit out of most of my criticisms. It just because the results are what matters. This is a results-oriented business. And yeah, kid does drive me nuts, but what am I supposed to say?
Yeah, especially when it's working. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know I don't want to speculate on the Najee thing because it was a blowout.
In the end, once the blowout happened, it's just
yeah. Like I don't think people should take away him being in during garbage time to think like he's out of the rotation or something. He's played way too well for that to be the case. I think it was just a matter of, like you said, it's just maybe kid trying something different, being able to experiment in a game where they clearly could experiment. Like, they had plenty of wiggle room. So let's just wait. Let's get to the Christmas Day game. Let's see what the rotation looks like there, theoretically, against what should be a much more competitive game. And then, we'll go from there.
Well, I'm not going to host a secondary show. Tomorrow's Christmas Eve. I'm tired. I got stuff we got to do around the house. Christmas Day itself, Josh and I were just talking about this. We won't host a post-game show immediately after. We're going to figure out a time, probably around the time our kids go to bed, and schedule it. Probably also won't do a secondary post-game show then either, which is bad for our money making and the fact that this provides us with income, but it's not worth it right now. It's not worth it right now. Like, or fewer people are listening. There's less fun stuff. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'll never say never unless it's like what if it's a truly epic game? Then maybe that could be the case. But right now, I'm not planning on doing these probably until the Friday after Christmas, where I think they play Portland again. So we'll see. I just want to let folks know schedule wise.
Yeah.
10:45. We talked a lot. Thanks for hanging out. You guys got anything else you want to talk about, Josh?
No, we did 42 minutes on a 30-point blowout against the lottery team. Let's pat ourselves on the back. We did it.
That's right. I hope they do. Drew, I hope Luka does drop 82 on Christmas.
That would be funny.
All right. See you guys later. See you on Christmas. Everybody have a good week. Go Mavs.
Drinking and driving is a decision that could change your whole world. Things will never be the same if you ever get a DUI. Because legal fees and time in court are just the beginning. Getting into a crash is another way that your world can be turned upside down. Your vehicle may not be the only thing that gets damaged in that crash. You can face a life-altering injury or even death, but you're not the only one that can face those consequences. Your decision to drink and drive can permanently impact not just your world, but someone else's world as well. Whether you injure them or leave their loved ones grieving. The next time you're out drinking, call a rideshare, a taxi, a sober friend, or a designated sober driver. The only decision that will change your world for the better is the decision to call for a sober ride. Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA.